Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition, the round 18 edition of CrowCast. And it's going to be a little bit of a wake, I think, because we're all very let down and disappointed by proceedings on the weekend, and none more so, I'm sure, than my cohort, Macca. How you going, Mac?
Well, I guess like everybody else, very disappointed. Partly pissed off as well, but very, very disappointed.
Yeah, not a good time. Two games in a row now, season really looking to be set up by a win, and certainly last night to keep ourselves in the hunt. And we were found wanting, unfortunately, so not good. Look, thanks to everyone who's joined us on Discord and also on the YouTube chat. Don't forget, if you're on our Discord live stage, you can raise your hand and have a chat with us, and I'm sure there might be a few people, Macca, that are just champing at the bit to have their say tonight, because I certainly am. I'm sure you are too.
There's a lot to talk about. I don't think it was our best effort, not just on the ground but off the ground as well.
Yeah, lots of things, as you say, to talk about in context of that win, mate. But first of all, as we always do, because you just need your little 5 minutes of fame, we'll go on and talk about the weekend's results, shall we?
Let's do it, mate.
Thursday night, speaking of keeping the season alive, the Swans kind of doing that. They're still in the hunt somewhat. 78-76, a good win over the Dogs.
Yeah, a little bit of a surprise. I thought the Dogs would win that, and particularly when they opened up very strongly in the first quarter with Bontempelli and Liberatore. I didn't say Liberace. I often nearly say that. No, in the first quarter, they were sort of bombing away, and I thought, yeah, they're going to run over them. But to Sydney's credit, they fought back, and they've got a couple of classy players. And if Gilden, is that how you pronounce it? Gilden, if he's not in the best 10 players in the state, I'll go he for Heidi. He's fantastic. He not only gets the ball for him, but he just beautifully passes it off to his teammates. And he gets hard balls. He just runs and runs and runs. I would love to have I'd love to have a player like him. And then you got Papley getting 4 goals. So, and eventually, it was all squared virtually at half time, and it just stayed that way. And it could have gone either way. But in the end, Sydney were the ones that got there and under a goal. And there were a couple of results like that. So, good luck to Sydney, and bad luck with the Bulldogs.
Well, keeping in line with that, Brisbane Lions absolutely choking that game against Melbourne at the G. The Lions going down by a point in the end, 105-104, and Melbourne keeping their top forward chances going. A loss there would have really put the cat amongst the pigeons for the D's, so a good win for them. But, God, the Lions just work out how to lose probably as well as we do away from home.
Yep, 24 points up, only 7 a bit minutes to go, and they've lost from there. That's incredible.
And they shut it down. They tried to shut it down so far out.
Yep. One thing I think was significant about the win for Melbourne, no Grundy. They dropped Grundy. And I've actually said on this show, going back a few weeks back, Grundy has ruined Melbourne's setup by getting... Gawn used to be the dominant ruckman. He used to spend probably about 90% of the time on the ball, and then he go up forward and kick a couple of goals, and one of the forwards would come up there and have a little turn. Grundy's not a forward's arsehole. I mean, he just certainly messed up their whole structure.
That's not true. That's not exactly true.
That's the way I see it, mate. And
Grundy played all his juniors at full forward.
He's a poor man's forward, mate. He's a good ruckman, but a poor man's forward. And Gordon had 29 disposals, 38 hit-outs, 10 clearances. I mean, I heard a couple of other so-called experts talking about it, and they were saying they would think that Melbourne should be trading Grundy off and getting back to their original structure.
I don't disagree with that. I think they've tried to replace Jackson with Grundy. Different kind of player, in my opinion. I wouldn't mind betting that they offload that, and it'll be interesting because the third club that Grundy goes to won't probably pay any of his salary.
Well,
because Collingwood and Melbourne paying some of it.
We should have a crack at it because, I mean, he's on about somewhere 900 or a million, and around about 300 being played by Collingwood. Melbourne pay a couple hundred, and you get a guy for 500. So,
yeah. Tones in the chat says it's true, Macca, ignore Phoenix. Well, Tones, mate, I actually watched Grundy's under-18s year because my son was in that year and my son actually played on Grundy at fullback. So, I think we might just ignore you, mate. Anyway, so he can play forward, Macca, but I think what Melbourne have done is they've sent Grundy back and got him to work on his... got into my son's 193 Baxter, so he was well outpointed. He was playing for Westies and he was a poor man's fullback. Should have been off a halfback flank. Anyway, I think they've tried Gawn up forward and Grundy in the ruck. They've now reverted back to Grundy in the ruck. I think they've told Grundy to go back to the twos and work on his forward craft because it has been a while. And I think if that doesn't work out, they'll get rid of him.
Yep.
Anyway, next up, who have we got? We've got Collingwood pretty much doing a number on Fremantle. Also at the G, Collingwood easy 46-point winners. Freo almost done, I think, Mac.
Yeah, they are. But it was interesting. The Pies outscored them by 8 goals in the second quarter, and that was actually the winning margin. So, like, for 3 quarters, they've actually matched them, apart from 1 quarter where they've just let them run all over them. But partly in Freo's defence, they ended up with 2 injuries in Darcy, which is their main ruckman and a very good ruckman, and Walker. And they also had a couple of other guys that had to stay in the field with injuries. So they weren't good enough, but they probably would have been better without injuries. They would have got a lot closer. But, you know, Collingwood, they're the measuring stick.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
And last comment, 3 more Brownlow votes for Dacos.
Oh, it's his to lose now, isn't it, mate?
Yep.
We had the Suns getting the dead cat bounce after Drew's sacking, 77-51 over the Saints, who are fast looking vulnerable and got a tricky few games, the Saints, ahead of them. So I can certainly see a team outside the 8 bumping them out at the moment, maybe GWS with their form. But the Suns looked all right, 26-point winners of the Gold Coast.
You've told my dead cat bounce I was going to come out with.
Sorry, mate.
Well done, mate. No, the Gold Coast players, they played with intensity, a much greater intensity they did when they played for Jew. And I mean, that's a criticism, really. I mean, you've got bloody Atkins, for example. I mean, Atkins had 32 disposals and kicked 2 goals. When did he last do that? When Moses was playing. So yeah, but anyhow, look, they dominated the midfield, they dominated the game, and they won it. So a caretaker coach gets up again and first up.
It's so happens so regularly, doesn't it? It's amazing.
Got a good percentage.
Anyway, and then the first upset really of the round, Carlton getting up over Port Adelaide by 50 points, if you don't mind, at Marvel. And they're just on a little bit of a march as well, unexpectedly, 122-72. Probably the loss Port had to have.
Well, interesting you say surprise, because once I saw Port side, I actually changed my tip and went for Carlton, because that was a pretty poor side they sent out there, Clean. They had a lot of really good players out, and to make that many changes, well, maybe were quite happy to have a loss at this stage, so you're not under that pressure of always having to win. I don't know, but they certainly played like that.
Yeah.
They had very few good players, and their forward line for Carlton, that was scintillating. Curnow, Silvani, and Mop, they got 13 goals, I think it was, 11 goals between them. And interestingly enough, the Blues won every quarter. Port never made any comeback at any one stage. So it was a very poor effort. But again, as it was a very poor Port side that went out there.
Yeah. As Jad says in the chat, they came out looking like it was a friendly. So, as I said, maybe it was a loss they had to have, and they kind of recognised that they needed just to, freshen a few blokes up, maybe. I don't know. They're fine. The Cats doing an absolute number on Essendon, 122-45 down there at the Graveyard GMHBA Stadium, 77-point winners. Yeah,
they slaughtered them, 78 points, and they're gathering momentum at the right half of the season. Most of the damage was done in the first half, and they kicked 7 goals, I think it was, before there was any score from Essendon. So. But Merritt and Parrish, who dominated against us, they were brought back to the field. So it just shows probably where we sit, because Geelong made a real number on them.
No, I don't think it shows where we sit. You can't compare. Like the Geelong games are always an outlier, mate, down there.
That is true.
I don't think it's a true indication.
No, they had 64 inside 50s to 28, so it was a real domination.
Yeah, it's a shocker. It's an absolute shocker. And then today, ignoring our disaster just for a moment, today we had Hawthorn getting up in a fairly dreary match. I didn't watch a lot of it. 48-point winners over North after a slow start, I think it was.
I actually stopped watching it too after a while. It was getting boring. And, they won by 6 goals, 12. If they'd kicked straight, it would have been a very, very large margin. So, but Warpool and Amon were outstanding for them. Sissy, he was back, but he didn't have much effect on the game. He didn't need to, because the ball was down the other end most of the time. So, just too good.
Yep, and the last game of the round, which just finished a little while back, we had... West Coast gallant in defeat, I guess you'd say. 38-point losers to Richmond, 98-60. Eagles just short on cattle, really, and Richmond doing what they needed to do.
I think you summed it up, mate. They're definitely the worst team in the competition. They've had a lot of injuries, and the last 2 games, North Melbourne proved they're the second worst team, and West Coast proved they're the worst team, and I think that's about sums it up.
Yeah, so not a lot of surprises, really. They're obviously our game and probably the Port game, although, as you point out, the Port game maybe not so much. But when we look at the ladder, we've got Collingwood out in front now, and probably minor premiership favourites on 60 points. Port on 56, well clear of Brisbane in third on 48. Melbourne on 44 points, putting themselves a little bit ahead of the rest of the pack. Geelong, the sleeping Giants, Macca.
They are.
Up to fifth, 38 points. There'll be a few teams thankful that Melbourne hang on to fourth spot, because I don't think you want to give Geelong the double chance, to be honest with you.
They're coming good. Yeah, they really are coming good at the right time, Payne.
Oh, yeah. St Kilda slipping on 36, along with the Bulldogs, Essendon. In fact, all 4 of the teams that were sitting in those positions had rough weekends. Essendon just hanging in on 36. Giants on a bit of a march on 36. And then we've got Carlton and Richmond above us on 34 points, Macca. That just shows how costly those last 2 losses have been. We're now level on 32 with Gold Coast, albeit with much better percentage. And then the Swannies just half a game behind us on 30. Freo 28, Hawthorn 20. North and West Coast rounding it out.
Look, it might well be, Payne, that losing today will cost us any chance of getting in the 8. Not that I think that matters greatly, because of the fact that if you compare us to the other teams in the 8, and definitely against the top one, we were going to get resold out anyhow. So maybe it's better we don't make the 8, because if you make it, you've got to deserve it. And at the moment, we don't deserve it.
Well, I've been saying for a couple of weeks, Mac, and I know you agree with me that the finals were really a secondary thing this year, and unfortunately, it's been a bit of a distraction, in my opinion. It certainly distracted the coaching panel, in my opinion, and led to some odd selections and some very odd game day strategies, particularly in terms of how we run our midfield, but also in terms of our game plan, which was very evident to me being at the game on Saturday night. So, as mentioned, the Giants getting up after being 17 points down at three-quarter time to win by 14, 10-11-71 to 8-9-57. The second time this year the Giants have come back at us, and we can't blame the bloody heat this time because it was freezing at Adelaide Oval. What do you reckon, Mac?
Very disappointing effort for the boys. And, in the last quarter, we had 13 entries inside 50 for 1 point, and they had 17 for 5 goals too. And there's that, in itself tells a story in the sense that we are supposed to have this really A-grade quality forward line, so the ball must have been coming in a very terrible manner for the boys to not be able to score. And I think that somebody says in the chat they were crap entries, and they were. There were too many. There was a couple of Smith bombs coming in there to just around the 50-metre mark where they go flying back down the other way again, and that sort of stuff. No, look, I thought there were a couple of Rankin hit the post, and Keys couldn't kick over a jam jar and kicks it out of bounds. There was. I thought we were quite pathetic in the last quarter, to be honest.
Well, Mac. Yeah, I agree with you. Obviously, to be honest with you, I was at the footy with my mate and his lad, and to me at heart, it was always a false lead, in my opinion. I felt like GWS were just a bee's appendage away from breaking the game open all game. We were hell-bent on keeping the game close in. We didn't want to get them on the outside, because we knew they were going to flog us on the outside if they did. And when the game broke open a little bit in the last, that was exactly the case. We played plotters in the midfield. We refused to take the game on at any stage, and it showed. It showed. In the end, we played pitiful, defensive, piss-weak football. And I don't know whether that was player-driven or coach-driven, but that's where we've got to.
Well, I can't argue with any of that. I think that's about how I saw it too. We were flattered by the score somewhat, because we did have some very, very good goals that came out of nowhere, but in the sense that we also had a lot of very poor efforts going in there as well. And I was, when we led a quarter time, that was only on the basis of a quick few minutes to get that. And same with the third quarter. I started to get worried in the third quarter. I just could see little signs starting to show. And some of the matchups, putting Michelani onto Green, they must have been drinking when they decided to do that. Seriously.
Well, you're setting the kid up to fail, aren't you?
Yeah, that isn't fair to the kid. You just don't do that. Green's a champion. He is a champion. He's one of the greats of the game. And you're going to put a kid who's played only 15 games or something like that? It doesn't make sense.
Well, they did a couple of funny things. Like, they put Chase Jones on Kelly for a while. And not only is Chase not really a tagger, but it actually nullified his output as well, Chase. He wasn't able to get into the game, and they eventually got the hang of it and put Keys on him. Not that it did a hell of a lot much better. But I thought using Chase as a stopper was a silly move as well.
That was the second one I was going to raise, because Jonesy's been in good form, really good form.
Yeah.
And they negated his good form, and he isn't a stopper by nature anyhow. He's more of a dash.
Right. See ball, get ball kind of guy.
Yeah, and I must say, you can see the guy actually believes he is an A-grade footballer now. When he has that shot for goal, there was never any doubt that he was going to kick the damn thing. He's been very good when he has shots for goal, even under pressure. But coming back to that particular move, that was a stupid move. Keys was the obvious one right from the word go. I mean, Kelly was stopped by a certain type of player last week, and a player that was prepared to sacrifice every part of the game just to stop him, and that's what happened. While Keys is a very, very determined player, I don't think he's that close to Checker, but he would have been a better option than to start off with Jones. Another poor effort by the team.
Well, and finally, you need to understand what our midfield mix was, which was basically Laird, Dawson, Sloane and Keys all night. And I think the only person that got a centre bounce attendance the whole match was Luke Pedler got one.
That's correct. Now, I might upset a few people like this, but and I know Rory Sloane's been one of our heroes for a long, long time. Now, he's got his 250 games up. For God's sake, take him out of the middle. Take him out of the middle. If you're going to play him till the end of the season, stick him on a wing. But for God's sake, let's put a different mix through the middle. You can't have all plotters in the middle, and that it's not Rory's fault. He's 33 years of age. He's had a knee done, and he's not as fast as he used to be. We just need quicker legs in there. And if they're going to play Rory till the end of the season, put him on the wing. And I just can't accept they give him a contract for next year. They should not.
No, they shouldn't. Sloane actually had a season high CBAs on Saturday night. That was his highest proportion of centre bounce attendances for the year. And I just don't see how it's justified. Nothing in his form, nothing in the makeup of the side actually justified him being in the middle as often as he was. And I get really concerned, Macca, when we start getting hints again of the club putting individuals and milestones and marketing opportunities ahead of winning a bloody important game of football.
Well, they have in this particular case, there's no doubt about it. And it's just so wrong. It is just so wrong. I mean, you take Soligo, for example. They did this to Jackson last year. They played Jackson out of form. He was in form in the middle, took him out and put him on a wing where he was no good, and eventually got him to the stage where he got dropped. Soligo, he was at one stage, they're going back a few weeks ago, he was really firing, but Sloane's taken that spot in the middle and he never got there, and his form has suffered, and now he's down in the twos. This year was supposed to be a building team to get be a launching pad for next year, so that we can genuinely be a finals contender next year. But some of those young boys that they've been retarded in their progress by some of the club's actions and who they select.
Oh, no doubt about it, Mac. No doubt about it. I've got to just indulge me a little second, because I've got a little slide here that I've put together, which is essentially everyone's centre bounce attendances for the year, right? So it's the proportion of total centre bounces. So I've got Rory Sloane up here, and as you can see up around here, in round 18, the proportion of he attended about 68% of centre bounces, which is his highest proportion for the year, Macca. And I just want to point a couple of things out. You can see at the beginning of the year here, we had Josh Rochelle attending until about round 7, when his attendance has dropped down to about 20. Okay. And he hasn't really, apart from one game in round 16, he hasn't really had much of a say in the midfield in the meantime. Isaac Rankin, first 2 rounds, he was had some attendances, not much, not more than about 15% of them. Round 9, he had a couple, but apart from that, not one centre bounce attendance, Mac.
I know.
Jake Soligo, up until about round 9. Okay. So that's who we got. We got Rochelle and Soligo in particular. and Rankin for a little bit. Round 9 seems to be that key point, right? And that was after three or four wins in a row, and that's when finals started to become an issue, right? Yep. And the bloke that has benefited from that is Ben Keys. In the first half a dozen rounds, not a lot. He had one game where he was in there for 45%, but apart from that, very low. He was playing forward. And then after round 9, have a look at his attendances. Obviously, Geordie Dawson came in after round 3, after round 2. Harry Schomburg figured in our first couple of games, first 3 or 4 weeks. Obviously, donut since. There was another one here. Lairdy obviously has been a constant. Sam Berry's another one that got ditched after round 3, hasn't been seen since. So you can see that there was a clear point in the season where the midfield philosophy changed completely, and it coincided with our realisation that we might have a shot at making the finals. And I think that's been the single most important issue that has faced our club, and we've handled it terribly poorly. We've forgotten, and I've said this for weeks and weeks and weeks, and those numbers back me up. We have lost sight of development in the hunt for a finals appearance.
Yeah, look, I totally agree with you. It is interesting because playing with young players that we were and playing through the middle, that got us into that position where all of a sudden they had that thought.
Exactly right, Macca.
But common sense would say if they're doing that to get us there, well, we should keep on doing it.
100%. 100%. That's exactly the point. It was the kids that got us into a position where finals were a chance. And instead of trusting them, Macca, this is the big issue, and this is what's going to bring Matthew Nicks undone, in my opinion. Instead of trusting the kids to continue on and rotating them intelligently so that they remain fresh, we've got enough of them. We've got 2 or 3 in the twos that can roll through. We've got enough of them to roll through there, and we can still support them with the senior players. But when you show those up-and-coming kids that they are not trusted, then the coach will lose them very quickly, in my opinion. And one person who I thought played very frustrated on Saturday night was Josh Rochelle. He was trying to get himself into the game. He was trying to impose himself on the game because he's been camped on that half-forward bloody flank for the last 2 months, and I reckon he'd be jack of it.
I think you summed it up well there, Pete. If you're a player that really wants to be in the action all the time, it's a horrible position to be stuck at. And he obviously has had a gutful of it, and it didn't take much for him to lose his cool. And look, he shouldn't have done what he did, because these days you can't get away with anything. But I'm
not excusing what he did, but what I'm saying is symptomatic. And you look at, like, Sam Berry has averaged something like 27 or 28 possessions in the twos for the last month. Harry Schomburg's been playing. Harry had like 9 or 10 touches last week in a quarter and gets dropped.
Yeah, that was amazing, that.
Like, I don't know what they're doing with those two lads. Harry had a really good game on the weekend with Bez being out with what I think is COVID. He's certainly sick. But I just don't understand why we are relying on, there's no possible way that Matthew Nicks and his coaching staff can look at our midfield on paper on a Thursday night and then look at the opposition, and let's not forget that GWS had players out. They had Tom Green out and Lockie Ash, I think. Was it Lockie Ash? Someone else? Out. No, who's the other one? They had a couple of keys out anyway. But Green's been fantastic for them. But you couldn't look at our midfield on paper against someone like a GWS's midfield and go, yeah, we're going to stack up all right with this.
Yeah, I've actually written that down here. So you're ahead of me, but that's one of the points I was going to raise. That on paper, you look at their midfield against ours, and you think, "Shit, we're in trouble."
Yeah, and I think, Macca, what the knock-on effect of that is that, and it was as plain as the nose on your face to me on Saturday night. I was sitting with Riverbank, so I was looking down the ground. We, at no stage, had any desire to take the game on. We wanted it to be a scrap. We wanted to keep the ball in. We didn't want to change angles. We didn't change lanes. We didn't go for any passes. We were content to kick to contests, and we were content to keep the ball and keep the game a contested ball game. And it kept us in the game for 3/4. But as soon as GWS broke the shackles, that was the end of it.
Yeah, well, it was, the difference was we had 13 entries in that quarter, they had 17. But if you look at our 13, they weren't clean and to a player.
No.
They were just to a pack. Whereas when they broke and when they went into their forward lines, they were running and making space, and they also were on spread, so you can't, we were all clumping, and they were spread, so they had opportunities to give it to players. And
Was
I think
very evident.
Did it so wrong.
Was very evident, Matt. You could see GWS had a really good manner off half-back of going diagonally across the ground. So they'd push the ball forward but diagonally, so they weren't losing territory. And they would put it to grass. They would put it to the bloke's advantage. Just about every disposal when they were transitioning was actually putting the next player where they wanted them to go. So whereas we tend to kick to spots, they were putting it out to the advantage of basically saying to the bloke, that's where you need to be, and allowing him to run on, right? Which is what you're supposed to do, Whereas we, as I said, we were kicking it on people's heads. We weren't. The amount of times there was opportunities to move the ball laterally or diagonally, there's plenty of space, and it was as plain as the nose on your face. And the players weren't interested in moving to those spots. And quite frankly, the blokes with the ball weren't even looking there, which makes me think that it was actually a tactic employed rather than just the players not looking, because there was no appetite to move the ball aggressively at all, because I think we were worried that we'd get it opened up. And that all stems from the coaches looking at the team sheet on a Thursday night and thinking, shit, we better not make this a fast game because we'll get torched.
Well, all right. Once it opened up, we were. But the thing is that we should have used the ball so much better ourselves. That was the real problem.
Yep. And, it wasn't helped by the fact that after quarter time, we couldn't hold anything up forward either. Darcy Fogarty had an absolute shocker with regards to ball handling. Our ball handling in general, both aerially and on the deck, was pretty average. We fumbled a lot. We couldn't take a contested mark. We couldn't take an uncontested mark half the time. But Big Darcy had a shocker.
Yeah, he did. I think he had something like 6 possessions in the first quarter and 8 for the game, something like that.
Yeah, he just couldn't take the ball. He couldn't take the ball.
Yeah, and Walker never touched the ball in the second half.
No, well, I mean, they've got a good defence. They've got a couple of good pillars in defence, GWS. What we needed was contests to be made up forward, and for our ball getters at ground level, Isaac Rankin, etc., to get to work. Luke Pedler was played far too much up the ground, so he was irrelevant up forward. He got a lot of his touches outside 50.
He did.
Isaac Rankin was obviously their main focus, and he was heavily looked after. And that lad, I always forget his name, that GWS lad that played on Rankin, he's an exceptionally good defender. Taller than Rankin and just as quick, so he played really well. But we didn't really have much of a formation in terms of ground ball players. Lockie Murphy was irrelevant. We really didn't have many players at the feet. Rochelle tried, but got flustered and tried to do too much at times, and I think that the season's actually got the better of him, to be honest with you. So, we didn't have a lot at the feet, but I'll tell you what, our marking players, particularly after quarter time, and particularly Darcy Fogarty, made a meal of a lot of opportunities.
Well, there was no marking thing. That was the problem, because Walker didn't take any, and Fogarty never took any in the second half. And Thilthorpe, I think, took one. So there wasn't much doing, and at ground level, we weren't doing so well there either. I was disappointed a little bit with Rankin's game, but he was very well minded, I must admit. Pedler, as you said, I thought Pedler was up too high most of the time. It just, well.
So let me ask you this. Let me ask you this, Macca. If Rankin's getting sat on, and it's quite obvious that he's getting sat on, we surely didn't pay pick 5 forward pocket. Surely we didn't, did we? Please tell me that we didn't.
Well, we were told that he would not only be in the forward pocket, but he would also have runs on the ball.
So why wouldn't you just chuck him through the middle when he's getting sat on, break the game open a bit?
Well, because you and I can think and they can't.
But, I mean, that's obvious, isn't it? I was shocked that Rankin didn't get a run through the middle.
No, it's absolutely ridiculous when you think of the fact that, you've got a player of his quality, he's elusive, etc. And, okay, he's being held, the ball's not coming in particularly well, and he's being held tightly. The first thing you've got to do is give him an opportunity to run around and get a kick or two on the ball.
Yeah, and as PJ points out in the chat, Rashido says Rankin doesn't play midfield. Well,
he did say that.
So Mark Rashido is who's head of our list management committee, is confirming then that we paid pick 5 for a small forward.
Yeah, well, that's bullshit. Anyhow,
at the beginning of the trade season, remember I said I don't reckon Rankin's worth any more than pick 12. And,
that was my number too.
If we were going pick 5, we needed to get something back. We ended up paying, as well as we did in the Jordan Dawson trade, we got absolutely bent over in the Rankin trade. And if we paid pick 5 for a bloke that we don't intend to play up forward, don't intend to play in the midfield, then someone needs to be taken out of the back and flogged.
Well, it had to be pick 12. Not pick 5, because look, Charlie Cameron, he was a very good forward pocket. He was a pick 12, and and Rankin at that stage of his performances at the Gold Coast probably weren't as good as Charlie's were with us. So just taking a line on that, we should never ever have been given pick 5.
No, basically, if we couldn't do any more than pick 5, then we should have said, sorry, Isaac, we can't do the deal. Simple
I agree
as
with you. Or a future first or something like that, because on the basis that we will be higher next year. So but that pick 5 was wrong. Yeah.
So I mean, all that being said, Isaac has done well in the little cameos that he's had in the midfield. He adds a little bit of run and flair and agility, and he doesn't have to have a midfielder's engine. He can play 3 or 4 minutes at a time, and certainly when someone's getting sat on in the forward line, and Rashido's words I think in the replay were, we just got to keep him up forward and hope that he works it out. That's bloody ridiculous, and it shows why Mark Rashido's a hotelier and not a coach, because you don't do that. You try and free the bloke up. Take him up the ground, put him on a wing, play him on a half-back flank, run him through the middle for a minute, get him away from that tag, get some value out of one of your so-called star players.
Yep, no argument for me. I heard an interesting, I don't know where I heard it, but somebody was going through Adelaide's draft pick for about the last 10, 12 years, and they made the point, or certainly the last 6 or 8 years anyhow, they made the point of what does Adelaide need the most at the moment? They need quality mids. That's what they need. And they went through who our draft picks have been, particularly in the pointy end of the first Oh, PJ said it was Rowie. Yeah, and first and second rounders for the last few years. And they're all bloody backmen. All backmen. No, Phil Thorpe being an exception. There's no midfielders in there.
Sorry, Macca, my headset's just gone over, so I'm going to swap them over, and hopefully that works.
Yeah, I'm just saying that on the Rowie show, saying that he went through all our draft picks and just saying,
Keep talking, mate, while I'm sorting that out.
Yeah, and he made a point about the couple that they had picked the midfield didn't make it, and the rest of them they were backmen or whatever, And the one thing they've avoided is gun midfielders. Pathetic, and that's the one thing we really do need. Good midfielders. I mean, Port Adelaide recognise that, and they've got. I think Port Adelaide's risk management is much better now. So I think they've put together a very, very good midfield, and that's where the engine is. And here we are. PJ's got it up. Miller, Duday, Gallucci, Fogarty, Jones, McHenry, Mackesy, Pedler, Thilthorpe, Rochelle, Rankin.
Yeah.
So there's no midfielder there, mate.
No. Well, I mean, Gallucci was a midfielder. Miller was picked as a midfielder. It wasn't a midfielder's arsehole. Jones was, McHenry was, Pedler was, supposedly. But there's probably, if you want to talk out and out midfielders, there's probably only Gallucci and Jones that you would say would be the two that were actual mids.
Yeah, and they're not of the calibre of what we were really talking about anyhow.
No, that's right. So, look, sorry about that little hiccup. My other headphone just ran out of batteries.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem if the club are actually consistent, but the thing that bothers me the most is that we've reverted to this back to the seniors. It just shows really lack of intent, Macca, in my opinion. And I'm pretty much convinced that Matthew Nicks, as I've mentioned a few times over the course of the podcast this season, his win-loss is still sitting at about 34-35%. He'd have to be a miracle worker to get us into contention, let alone a premiership. I think he's done very well for his immediate mandate, which was to unite the players after a lot of turmoil. But I think we need a different coach to take us to the next step. I think we need someone who's a little bit harder, because at the moment it sounds to me like a mate coaching mates. That's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah, look, PJ says in the chat, Nicks will coach next year, but not longer. And I think that's probably true, because he is contracted for next year, and so I reckon he'll serve that year out. And in the meantime, we'll be looking around to tie up somebody of quality, because you are right. I don't think Nicks has got, and I'd love to be proven wrong, but I don't think he's got it in him to take us to the level that we would like it to be.
Well, I just don't. I think it's very difficult, and there's been some telling comments in the press conferences. The one that I put up last week that got the bloody video blocked, thanks YouTube. His press conference after last night was pretty average. Talk about Rory Sloane being upbeat in the change rooms as if we'd actually won. I mean, we've just lost our season. We just lost our season.
I couldn't give a flying F about how Rory was in the change room. No. That made me very angry, actually, when I heard that.
Yep.
I thought you're punching him on the nose. I mean, why is he upbeat? We just lost the bloody game.
Exactly, Macca.
I thought that was absolutely so stupid. Absolutely stupid.
Extremely self-absorbed. In fact, I've never seen so much made of a 250th game at the ground. There was merchandise. There was a massive flag over the window above the southern gates. Now, you can't tell me that took 5 minutes to bloody put together. Like, there was a massive hoo-ha for a bloke's 250th game. Now, I know that Rory Sloane is a club stalwart, and I've loved a lot of what he's done for the club over the course of his career. And I know he's not going to get to 300 because his body just isn't going to let him get there. So it's his last milestone for the club. They wanted to honour it. I get it. But why would you go to all the trouble of picking a midfield on the basis of trying to make finals and then prioritise a bloke's milestone over probably the most important game of the season in the context of that goal?
Stupid. Absolutely stupid. And the other thing, Rory Sloane has been absolutely fantastic for the football club. There's no doubt about that. He, until he got his injury, he's been the heart and soul of the club, and he's a fantastic human being on top of that. But that doesn't win you premierships in the sense that he got injured. He's 33 years of age. He's come back and he can't play at the level that he could before. And that's not his fault, it's just how it is. Now, we've celebrated his 250th game, and as far as I'm concerned, they may play him to the end of the season, but that should be it. Pull up stumps, no extra year. Walker's different. Walker's having one of the best years of his career. So, but Rory is being injured, and he's on the other end of it, and he's declining. So, no.
And this is what I mean. This is what I mean about Nix's ability to take us from to go from the mandate of just gelling the players and getting the group back cohesive to actually being able to make ruthless selection decisions on blokes that he's formed relationships with. And I don't think he's got it in him, and that's what it's going to take. That's what it's going to take, and I don't think he's got it in him to do that, Macca. I don't think he's ruthless. I don't think he's got a hard edge, and I think that he's fallen into the trap that a lot of coaches in Adelaide seem to fall to. They spend so much time trying to gel the group that they actually forget what their job is, and that's to put a side together that can win a bloody premiership. Now, you didn't see Malcolm Blight come in and bloody blow smoke up people's asses. And even during the course of our premiership years, he didn't blow smoke up people's asses. You know, look how he treated David Pittman, and David Pittman ended up being one of our most valuable players, and Malcolm Blight will say that. But Malcolm Blight didn't care about giving him a bake when he deserved it either. Now, we don't have a coach like that, and maybe times have changed and players don't respond to that as much, but we still need someone who can make hard, ruthless decisions at selection when it's required.
Yep, and and you can't. Nobody could tell me that in a common sense fashion that Rory Sloane is going to be good enough next year to be our prime midfielder. He's just not going to be. He's just going to be another year older and another year slower. And look, he's been a legend of the club. He's got his 250 up. Just let him retire graciously and gratefully, and so that we can say thank you for your career, Rory. And rather than he goes another year, we think, he's out there making a bloody fool of himself. Yeah, we don't want that.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, if I mean, I can kind of cop Sloaney getting a depth contract for a year, but if he is still a mainstay of our midfield rotation next year, people won't have a podcast to listen to because I won't be sitting here talking about this shit for another 12 months, Macca.
But, if he does get a contract for another year, where are you going to play him, Pete?
Well, I don't care whether you play him in the twos and use him as depth. But if he is part of our main midfield rotation, then people are going to have more time on a Sunday night because I am not going to sit through another 12 months of this shit.
Well, look, common sense says he shouldn't get one. And if our list management people who have effed up so much in the past, they've done so many things wrong. Think properly, think sensibly, think logically about the future, think of how we are going to improve, how our young players are going to improve, and it tells you straight away, Sloane has been great for the club. He's given the best he's got to give to the club. He hasn't got it left to give to the club. Thank you, Rory, very much. You've been great for the club. You're a legend, and we'll find a job for you as an assistant coach or a development coach, and keep you around the club, because I think you're a good person to keep around the club, but not in the side.
Yeah. Sloane and Keys' continual runs through the middle have coincided and directly impacted with the development of Jake Saligo, Harry Schomburg and Sam Berry. And that's all there is to it. Now, Macca, don't forget we are interactive, and we have Thom in the chat that wants to come up and have a chat. We've also got Nuz from Sensible Crow podcast here. So, g'day, Nuz. Thanks for joining us. Thom, if you want to come on, make sure your microphone's not on mute, mate. How you going? Oh, come on. Get your audio done.
What is Tom Lyon?
Yeah. No, he hasn't got his audio going. Go back and sort that out, mate, and stick your hand up again when you're ready. But if anyone else wants to have something to say, there's some very sharp people in the chat, Macca. We've got bloody Naz, we got bloody J Mac, who never says anything. J Mac, it's about time you'd come up here and said something, mate. Tomo, we got PJ, Scoots, Tones. We got lots of people in here, mate, that probably make more sense than we do. So, I don't know where Vardy is. He's late to the party tonight, the Vardy party. But yeah, feel free, come in, say good day, have a chat. Let's look at some of the stats, shall we? Because there's got to be something in here that's going to tell us what the hell went on, Macca. We lost disposals by 4. Kicks were fairly even. Handballs fairly even. Inside 50s, we only lost by 6. Our disposal efficiency was fairly even. We weren't very efficient inside 50, but pardon me, neither were they. Free kicks, the umpires were pretty average, but I thought it was both ways. Riley O'Brien had 52 of the worst hit-outs you'd ever see and was completely ineffective around the ground. We'll talk about him in a minute, but he was very average. Clearances 40 to 43. We actually won centre 11 to 6, but as you mentioned, Mac, their centre clearances were far more effective, and not only that, they were from our bombs out of centre, because we weren't very cohesive. They were rebounding quite consistently, so our centre clearances were basically ineffective. Contested possessions were even, uncontested were even, turnovers were pretty even game. Marks even, marks inside 50, 7 to 10, contested marks surprisingly 14 to 8. If you look at the stats, wasn't a lot in it, but I tell you what, it just goes to show, because at no stage was I convinced. In fact, Sportsbet before the game had GWS at $3.26, and I thought that was the worst bloody odds ever, and I took some in a multi. Unfortunately, the rest of it didn't pay out, but if I could have got on GWS at halftime, I would have, because at no stage did I feel like we were playing a convincing brand of football. So whilst the stats were very close, I think what they did with the ball when they were able to get it on the outside was far more effective than what we were able to do when we got it out.
Yeah, when you think of you mentioned Rob there before, that beautiful tap, was it to Green? Just put it straight down his throat.
The first one of the third quarter, yeah, or the last quarter.
Yeah, and I thought that just really set the momentum for the quarter.
Yeah, and he completely wrong-footed Laird in that one. And it's consistent with how we've watched Rob ruck. He puts it where he can put it, not where he needs to put it. Don't get me wrong, a couple of nice knocks. I remember one across his back shoulder was pretty nice. But what we need to do with Riley O'Brien is have him marking the ball around the ground and imposing himself around the ground. And I felt he actually looked intimidated around the ground by his opponent. He didn't look comfortable at all.
Well, Briggs is a very physical ruckman. I've been watching him. He uses his body he smashes into the other ruckman quite a bit because he's very, very heavy. And he gave Rob a few collisions, and I don't know how much he weighs, but he's big. He's big, and Yeah, I don't think Rob really enjoyed it really with him, but yeah, as I say, somebody said he's mummy 2.0, sorry. Yeah, he is actually. He very much he's a Mumford in this day and age, but and he can actually play football too. So, but
yeah, I felt he was all right, but Riley O'Brien is, rates himself pretty highly, and he's got to get over that.
Yeah, but watching Briggs does get his taps to his players. Rob doesn't.
I'm talking around the ground, mate.
Oh, you're talking about taking marks around the ground.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, 2 or 3 is going to best you're ever going to get out of Rob.
Well, no, he has games where he's effective around the ground, but when he gets physically intimidated, like he was, against Briggs, and he gets that way against Nankervis too, I think at times, because Nank's a bit of a big fella. He just doesn't cope. He runs under the ball. He gets too vertical with his leap at the ball, and he becomes a passenger. Compare it to a couple of weeks ago when he was linking up in transition and all sorts of things. He wasn't working hard enough, and he wasn't making enough contests, to be honest with you, mate.
No, there's no argument about that.
So, the team stats really, and we've got two we've got here. We've got a couple of people. I've got Tomo here. Let's get Tomo on. Hopefully your mic's all working fine, mate. How you going?
Yeah, good, thanks, boys. How are you guys?
Hi,
Very
Tomo.
good.
Tell us all about it, mate.
Oh, I don't really have too much to say. I say that, actually, I do. I want to start off with a couple of positives first. I thought Miller probably had his best game all season, I thought.
He was okay. Yep.
I thought it was a lot better than how he's usually been playing. I thought Jones was also really good considering
Miller did
how little of the ball he got.
Yeah, he recovered well once he was...
Miller a squib one. He had a massive squid on the wing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember the one.
Anyway, go on, Tommy.
Anyway, for Miller, I feel like he's really getting used to his body again. I think that's the main thing. Anyway, to some of the negatives now, I think it was probably one of the most pathetic efforts I've seen from the Crows in a long time to not show up for a 250th game for Sloane like that and basically lay an egg is flat out pathetic.
It is, mate, because particularly when they made such a big build-up of it.
Yeah, I really thought we would come out humming after the poor effort we showed against Essendon. I'll
tell you. Sorry, Tomo. I'll tell you just before you get on to your main gripe. I'll tell you who else didn't show up. That's the crowd. A Saturday night game, we had 36,000, and the Western Stand was half empty.
But that's become our standard crowd thing.
Yeah, but we don't often get a decent time slot. Saturday night time slot, Macca, 36,000. I know Illuminate's on, but really? It was freezing. It was 5 degrees. Put a jacket on. 35,000 as Vardy puts... Yeah. Sloaney's 250th. The club's got to be worried about that, in my opinion.
Yeah, it was like I said, it was really flat around the ground. Like not a lot of hype.
Right, Tommy, what were you going to get into?
My thing is actually with Nathan Van Berlo and how I really do not rate him as a midfield coach.
Well, I don't think we're not going to fight you about that, mate. I can assure you.
No. But I think he's the one who has to be on the chopping block first. I'm really sick and tired of seeing poor midfield running patterns, and just the mix entirely. It's awful. I'm not sure how much Nick's has a say on the midfield. I mean, it would be nice to know, but yeah, it's awful. And I guess finally, I think I really want Nick's to take some accountability in press conferences. And after match talking, because it's been horrible where he seems to be deflecting a lot recently.
That was there was a bad deflection this week.
Yeah, and I mean you're coming out with Lyon comes out for the recent game against Gold Coast, and he absolutely smashed his players in the press conference. And he really took some accountability for that club as well. And we need accountability now. You cannot be putting that type of effort out in a marquee game like this.
Well, 100% agree with what you're saying, mate, because you're absolutely spot on. And then for the coach to actually say that Rory was very happy in the club rooms, who give a flying about that?
Yeah, boys, that's really all. Not too much to take away from that game. It's one of those ones, I think.
What do you think we could have done better and where, Tomo?
Well, it's clearly the midfield. We need a midfield talent of some aspects. I doubt we're going to get it through a trade. I mean, I think I'm probably like most fans where I don't really care, never really cared about results this season. And for the last 6 games, I really do not care about results. It's just about getting games into our young future midfielders and leaving Keys and Sloan to the wayside.
Agreed.
You're on the money, mate. You're on the money.
I guess midfield adaptability is a big issue. I've been wanting to see Jones have a run through there for a while, and just trying something different in those situations.
Yeah, I think that would be a good point.
So that's all for me. So,
you did very well, mate. Good stuff.
Great to have you on, and thanks for your support.
Well done, mate.
We got Arab here, so Arab, always good to have you on, mate. Come on and give us the benefit of your wisdom.
Hello, guys. How are you today?
Good, mate.
All the better for hearing you, mate. Tell us all about it.
I just want to say, I said this, I think, like a while back, but I'll say it again. Isn't it interesting? Like, what division has not changed? It's the CEO has changed. All the coaches have changed. And it's just the recruiting department and the list management department has not changed. And
on the money.
They've come in, and since they've came in, even like before Matthew Nix, even before I think it was even the 2017 coach, I forgot his name for some reason. That has been the worst aspect of the Crows for the past, I don't know, decade, I feel like. We've been screwing up list management one after the other one. Bryce Gibbs, Galucci, you can just keep going on and on and on and on. And till this day, that department, it's not the coach. I don't care. Like, the Nix has done an amazing job. He got a piece of crap and turned it into a club. But the only thing that has not changed is that department, and I feel like that department has way too much control of where we go, and I feel like they have too much say on what the coaches do and who they play, and that needs to change. If it doesn't, we're screwed.
It's interesting, Arab. A lot of the premiers over the last decade, I guess, have benefited from good list management, and it's either through luck or good management. So Geelong obviously had Stephen Wells, who's a bit of a guru when it comes to list management. Western Bulldogs had a nice little run there where they got a couple of father-sons and some good high picks. You've had Sydney benefit off an academy. Collingwood have got 2 Dacoses and a Moore as father-sons, so that obviously helps them. It is such a critical part of the success story, and we're in a difficult position, Adelaide, because we're in South Australia, so it's difficult to lure talent, and if there's a couple of bad years of local talent, it becomes a bit hard and all the rest of it. But there's a club that does it better than us, and that's bloody Port Adelaide, certainly in terms of building a midfield. And, Port have probably prioritised their midfield for the sake of a weaker defence and forward line, although, a couple of their forwards are coming good now. Their defence is still a bit iffy, but they have prioritised their midfield, whereas we've prioritised every other part of the ground except our midfield. It's such a critical part to get right. I don't think it's easy for interstate clubs in foundation states like WA and South Australia to get it right. I think we're behind the 8 ball. But as I've said in previous years, we have to do things differently. And if that means we have to throw a bucket of money over the market at a prime Victorian candidate, then we have to do it. We just have to do it. We have to pay our players differently in order to get the outcomes that we need.
Well, Brisbane did get McRae. I think it was Jack McRae last year or something. And why can't we do that as well? It's possible. It's just that we have a really bad list management. It's just as simple as that. And if you don't change that, you can grab whoever coach you want to bring in. It's not going to do much because he's just going to get screwed over by that list management. That's what I feel like is the problem.
That's a very, very good point. If you haven't got the cattle, it's not going to happen.
Yeah,
exactly.
And we don't have it in the midfield. Look, Lairdy, I give a tick to because Lairdy he does rack up the numbers and he works his ass off. And Dawson, who's had to fill in there in the midfield, he does his work as well. But we need some of these really dashing midfielders who just natural midfielders. And I'm looking like the Canilios and players like that. They can just rack up the numbers because they're just so good.
We have them. We have Pedler. We have Dowling, I think. Or we have Berry. We have Schoenberg. It's just we haven't developed them right for some reason, or they're just not ready. I don't know what's going on. Or it's the game plan or the list management. Once again, it's just they're not getting played in the right spots, and it's like.
Something's happened with YouTube there. I don't know what's going on there, why it's frozen. I think that's a problem with YouTube, guys, so just stick with it because everything seems to be right at my end. We'll just let it run for a minute and see if it corrects itself, because like I said, everything looks to be going okay at my end. I'm not dropping any frames or anything. I think if you have a look at the history of the two SA clubs, they've been most successful when they've had homegrown midfields. Like in 97-98, we had largely a homegrown midfield, apart from Kane Johnson. In the early 2000s, when we probably wasted an opportunity to win a flag, we had McLeod, Rashudo, and Goodwin and Edwards.
Massive midfield.
They were both, and when Port won their flag, they had a homegrown midfield as well. So I wonder. This is I guess what I'm talking about, where I'm saying that we're a bit behind the eight ball. And South Australia isn't producing as much talent anymore because our whole system has been diluted through, the SANFL not being as important as it once was. The country leagues paying a lot more money to kids coming out of under 18s. So you've got the situation where a kid comes out of under 18s, he doesn't get drafted. Instead of going and playing resis or ones in an SANFL team, he'll go and earn $400 a week playing for some bloody Barossa League club or some Murraylands League club, because why wouldn't he, right? So we lose a lot of talent out of the system in South Australia. And I just think we need to change it up. We need to be able to structure our list and structure our cap so that we can afford to pay over market for strong Victorian talent. That's the only way we're going to do it. We cannot compete at market rates. People have been talking about Bailey Smith recently, who I think could be a really good addition to our midfield. Now, he's stated that he wants to stay in Victoria, and why wouldn't he? He's a Victorian, right? But if we want him to come and play for us, then we need to offer him way over market. And we should be structured in our salary cap to be able to do that. And when people say we overpay, well, that's because we had to overpay. That's just the reality of being in this market. And I think we've talked about it before, Macca, and I remember talking about it with Pete last year and in previous years. Until we understand the reality of our situation, right, then we will not be able to attract enough interstate talent and hold on to enough interstate talent to be able to win a flag. We've just spent a lot of money paying for long contracts on speculative second-year players like Saligo and Rochelle and hoping that they're going to come good. But we've just tied up a lot of cap space doing that. Is it the right move? I'm not so sure.
Yeah, but we should be getting rid of a lot of cap space. Sorry, Aaron. But
no, you're good.
Siegeman should be going, and Sloan should be going, and there's somebody else who There's another one there that should be going as well. So, I think we've got the salary. Siegeman should be going. Yeah, I think we'll have the salary cap. We could probably bring in two good players, and so I believe we've got the capacity there to do it.
Well, how does Geelong do it though? Because they're just a little town club, and they seem to attract all players, and they've got all right. So I don't think that you need to spend all the money. I think you just need to have the right build and the right culture and the right system for actual players to be like, you know what, I want to go play for them, because like Geelong does it, and they've got like a little stadium. They've got, they're a small town. So if I was like a good player, wouldn't I want to play more for a bigger club, like let's say Collingwood, because that's where all the fans go. I get 60,000 people come and watch me. If I become a superstar, whatever, I get more money. But still, players choose to go to Geelong because of the culture, because of the thing they build. So I think if we build that, there's still a bigger chance of actually getting more players, because you can have all the money in the world, but if you don't have a good place for them to come to play for you, I don't think they will want to as well.
Yeah, but it's also it's a post AFL career for some of them. There's a lot of factors. There's a stigma about Adelaide, whether people like it or not, and it's misplaced. But here it's there. The simple fact is that there's 12 clubs in Victoria, mate, and they've got 12 clubs to choose from in Victoria if they want to move a club. So they're spelt for choice, because there's always a Victorian player looking for that type of player. So a Victorian club looking for that type of player. So, it's a difficult one, but, I think it's the point that Macca made earlier about the amount of non-midfielders we've recruited and drafted over the last, 10 years or so. It's got to change. It's got to change. There's enough midfield talent in the competition, and I don't care whether they're contracted or uncontracted, free agents or not. We need to pick the player that we want, or the list of players that we want, and we need to work down that list until we jag one. Simple as that.
Yep. And
definitely.
Yeah, it's interesting. We're after Redmond at the moment, and that's okay, because at least he's a free agent, so you don't have to give up draft picks for him.
There's no way Essendon won't match Macca.
I
don't even think he's going to come, but if he does accept an offer from the Crows, there's no way that Essendon won't match. The only way they won't match is if we pay like 800,000 or 900,000 over 5 years or something, and that's exactly my point. Why would we pay 800,000 or 900,000 for a halfback flanker?
Well,
it's a waste of salary cap. Even if it's like 400 grand a year, it's still a waste of salary cap. Let's be honest, it's not worth it. We've got so many of them.
Yeah, but what it says to me is that that the very fact that they're chasing him means they think the Duday will be going.
Yeah, but who cares? It's a halfback flanker. What's our fucking need, Macca? Our need is midfielders.
I understand that, but you've got 18 positions on the ground. You've got to have at any one time, and you lose Duday, you're losing your interceptor, and Redmond would take his place. So, but that doesn't.
For God's sake.
That doesn't.
Honestly,
let me finish.
Macca, for God's sake.
Let me finish. That doesn't decry for one moment the need to get a bloody midfielder.
Well, then you don't worry about bloody Tom leaving, because he's bloody hasn't been intercepting for 6 months, and we've got Josh Worrell in there doing a fantastic job. We've also got young Nankervis knocking down the door at halfback flank in the SANFL. Why would you spend close to $1 million a year over 5 for an intercepting halfback flanker when we've got 5 sitting on the list?
Well, I think Redmond's a very good player. I don't think the ones you're talking about...
No one's disputing that, Macca. No one's disputing that.
Well, look, I'm not disagreeing with you about that the midfielder is our priority. I'm not arguing about that. But I can't at the moment. I don't know of any midfielder that they're after, and I don't know of any midfielder that they can get.
Well, any midfielder in the comp they can get.
I don't think so.
Well, it just depends on the deal, mate.
Well,
how do you think Brisbane got Lachie Neale, a South So, sorry, Arab, how do you think Brisbane got Lachie Neale to go up to Brisbane? Lachie Neale, who's a country SA boy who went to Western Australia, how do you think that they got him to go to Brisbane?
Money.
If that's not a case study in how you can get it done, then I don't know what is.
Yeah, well, look, I'm happy for us to go and get the best midfield in the state, but I can't see this mob doing it.
Yeah, well, that's what we're saying. I mean, you do this all the time, Mackie. You kind of bow down and say, well, I don't think we're going to do it. We're not talking about what they're going to do. We're talking about what they should be doing and what they shouldn't be doing. And what I'm saying is that throwing a bucket of money at Redmond, who's a very, very good player, but plays in a position that we are probably, out of every spot on the field, we have the most in that position, and some very good players. The money that would take to get him out of Essendon, because they will match if it's just a 600 by 5 deal, I can guarantee you. And then even if we take him as a free agent, then we've lost our compensation for Duday anyway. Not that it would have been great, but the simple fact is, if we have to throw 800 or 900 at Redmond to get him to come over here, he is the wrong player to be making that deal with. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm happy. I'd be delighted if we could get ourselves a star midfielder. I'm not bowing down to anything, Fiend. I'm just saying the reality is we haven't been successful in doing it in the past, or I don't know whether we've made any attempts in the past, and I don't know whether we would be successful or make any attempts this year either. I mean, it's bloody obvious that we need one. I mean, there's no doubt about that. Nobody's arguing about that. So I'm not bowing down to any bloody thing. I'm just talking about reality in the sense of what this club has done in the past.
Yeah, but who cares what they've done in the past? Your statement was we need to get Redmond in, and my
I didn't say that we need to get him. I said they will probably get Redmond. I said that's what I said.
Well, do you think we should bring him in?
If we can't get anybody better, yes.
If we can't get any better, we may as well spend cap space on and so much for Nankervis, who's been knocking the door down in the twos.
I think he's a very good player, Redmond, and would certainly strengthen our side. But we should be after a midfielder. I agree with you. But I'm tired of saying the same old thing around in circles.
So am I, mate.
You say we should get one. Nobody's going to argue about that. Do you think we're going to get one, Fiend?
Well, how would I know? Because I'm not in the inner sanctum. I'm not about trying to predict this podcast isn't about trying to predict what the club will do. This podcast is discussing what they should be doing, Macca. No one can predict what the club's going to do. That's not the point. Who cares? What we're saying is what they should be doing. I mean, we didn't predict that the club was going to have a massive clean out a couple of years ago. We actually were part of the fan upswell that forced that. That's what being proactive is all about, not predicting what they're going to do.
Okay. Well,
that's right. I feel like we should be spending that money and add a bit more because the chat said Zach Bailey's from South Australia, who is from Brisbane. I would rather spend 950k or whatever it is to get him home, because he'll be worth it, because whenever he goes in the midfield, he changes it. And I feel like with Burgess and if he comes in with Burgess and stuff, he could be that next Dawson that comes in for us, and that will change everything. So players like that are kind of hidden, but that could use Burgess as an impact, and we need him, and we need to stop paying him for him. He'd be a huge get if we can just do that.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks, mate. Always good to have you on.
Thank you. It was good chatting with you guys. See ya.
And mate, don't get me wrong. I'm not having a dip, but I'm just saying we're here to discuss what we think they should do, not what we think they will do. I mean, that's why we talk about selection all the time, and we talk about what they should be doing, not what they will do. I mean, that's not what we're here for.
Okay. Well, let's move on.
Yeah, I don't even feel like going through player stats. We'll go through a few, but not in any particular detail because, it's the same old. And like the team stats showed, it really was immaterial. I mean, Leddy had 33, only 8 kicks in that 33 disposals, Macca. 8 kicks. It just shows that Rory Laird has such difficulty getting separation against quick midfields, doesn't it?
Not all the time though, because I know a lot of these. He did some very, very, very good forward running handballs as well, to players running past, and rather than him just doing a dump kick, giving it to a player running past. Several times, of course, he's under pressure and he's got to get rid of it by a handball. But I thought Rory was one of the very few in the side. In fact, I thought he was our best player that actually gave us a chance of winning the game by the way he played.
All right, so let's look. Rory had 8 kicks. Kelly had 11 kicks in 28. Whitfield had 21 kicks in 28. Caniglio had 15 kicks in 23. Perryman had 10 kicks in 22. I mean, your kicking gets you territory. It breaks open the zone. It breaks open the defence. It allows you to spread. And I understand Laird is that type of player, but what I'm saying is he just struggles to get separation, Macca, and he doesn't figure very highly on transition. He's a very much cold-face player, but he doesn't figure enough, in my opinion, in transition. And when he does, there's a couple of times where he got hit up on a short lead, and then he turns and kicks it high. It's just not constructive, in my opinion.
Yeah, but he gets a lot of the ball in tight. I mean, he had 11 tackles, for example. I just think that we don't. You're right. He's not the same type of player as the others, and we need one of those type of players. And it isn't Laird, but that's not Laird's fault.
No, not Laird's fault. But it shows the importance of not having 3 of those guys in the middle, doesn't it?
Well, we got 3 of the same, and that's apart from Dawson, who can actually find a target.
Yeah, Dawson will leg it out of there and hit a target more so than Laird. But so we had Laird and Dawson 33 and 27. You've got to go down to Sloane had 17 touches as our third mid. Had 57 ranking points, 6 kicks, shocking. 11 handballs. And Keys also 17 kicks, 7 and 10. There's your 4 midfielders, right? If you compare that to Kelly, Whitfield, Caniglio, and you got some other players just running through there, like Green and
runs through there.
And that. Yeah, and Callum Ward. Yep. So much more dynamic. And I guess this is the point, isn't it? That we're so one-dimensional in our midfield setup. And if you've got one player that can't get separation, it puts a lot of pressure on the rest of them.
Yeah, what Kelly can do, what Green can do, what Caniglio can do, they've got pace and they can burst from the midfield, and that gives a totally different dimension to the forwards. They've got opportunities to break, and because they got the guy that's going to deliver the ball, he's going to have opportunities to give it to somebody. If you're under pressure and doing a scrambly old kick, well, you really are struggling to get it to another player, and the players downfield are going to be struggling to get it when it comes down there. So it's a difference in the way it's being delivered from that centre, and I understand that. Laird. I forgive Laird because he earns hard ones. Dawson's good. He's a bit of a freak, but we do need that burst player, that really takes you apart.
Well, we need blokes on the outside, don't we? Vardy just put up clearance numbers for the season and their totals. Vardy, there's somewhere, and I saw it today, and I'm trying to find it while we're talking. Someone today put up the average or the clearance per CBA stat up, and I'll try to keep finding it while we're talking. But it basically showed that the kids' ratios of clearances as a percentage of their total centre bounce attendances was right up there with everyone except Laird. So you're not actually losing anything. I think Rochelle and Pedler's clearance stats per CBA were quite solid, and it sort of makes a mockery of them being protected by not being run through there. So the totals don't actually tell the full story.
It doesn't tell a story about how the lack of development of the young players as well.
Well, that's right. Anyway, we'll move on. Apart from those two midfielders, we had Smith with 22 useless kicks and 5 handballs. There were times I was watching Smith closely from my vantage point, and there were times, Macca, where he just did not look.
He actually ideally cartwheeled when he did a beautiful pass to somebody, and I was waiting for the big dump kick, and he actually looked and hit somebody on the chest, and I think it's about the only one of his kicks that he did. So, no, the master of the dump.
Plenty of times where he was coming out of defence where he did not look, and you could see that he did not look.
Yeah.
Anyway, I thought Hinge played all right again, building a really good season. He'd be top 5 in now BNF, I'd imagine. Mac, what do you think?
The more responsibility he's been given, I think the better he's played, actually.
Agreed.
And since he's had to get, they moved Dawson in the midfield and they put him back down, and he took on Dawson's role. I think he played very, very well. And he'd be in our top 5.
Agreed. Miller, he was okay. I wouldn't quite agree with Tomo that it was his best game for the season. I thought a couple of weeks ago he had a really good game, but he's getting more of the ball. He only squibbed it once. No, that's not quite what I was looking at, buddy. Anyway, he's more his composure has improved, Macca. I think that's probably the biggest thing, that his composure under pressure has improved. He's able to get clear and deliver the ball. I'd like to see him run with the ball a little bit more, Mac. But certainly he's on the improve, far better than what he looked at the beginning of the year.
Well, he had 21 disposals and a couple of tackles, and he was well in the game. I do remember the incident you were talking about, which was a bit average, but
he kind of just stuck an arm out, didn't he?
Yeah, rather than getting the body in the way.
Yeah. Oh, good, I found it. So centre bounce attendances for the year. Sorry, go on, mate.
Yeah. No, you go ahead with yours.
Centre bounce attendances for the year. Clearance percentages per attendance, right? Pedler and Saligo are at 15%. Laird is at 14%. Keys is at 11%. Rochelle and Sloan at 10%. And Dawson at 7%. Okay, so in terms of clearance as a percentage of centre bounce attendances, Pedler and Saligo are our best at 15. If you group the old 3 and the young 3, the young 3 have had 309 centre bounce attendances for 40 clearances at a 13% win rate. The old 3 have had 706 centre bounce attendances for 89 clearances, which is also a 13% win rate. So there's no reason why they shouldn't be playing the young kids. And thanks to Froggy on Big Footy for that, he came up with those numbers, so I'm plagiarising him. But it's telling, and the naked eye proves it. We've noticed that Pedler, Saligo, and Rochelle, they are very good at centre bounce attendances. They make things happen. They run through the contest at pace.
Yep. I think unfortunately, once they started not giving them, Saligo, though, they've destroyed him. Rochelle's playing like a frustrated player. Pedler probably hasn't got an engine to be in there permanently, but I'd like to see him have a lot more attendances at the bounce and then go back to his position.
Had one. Just ridiculous.
Yeah, one.
Had one.
That is. Well, I remember one particular game where we had 6 clearances and he won 3 of them.
Yeah, 3 of them. Yeah.
So I mean, he is a midfielder by nature, just being played in a different position. So I can't see why they won't give him like first in the middle, just even at the centre bounces.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know either, mate. I don't know, but those stats bear that out. You know, we're no better off with the oldies. We may as well be playing the youngies. Sloan, 17, 6 kicks, 11 handballs, was ineffective in his 250th, unfortunately. Ben Keys, a couple of good moments in his game, but I tell you what, mate, that pass in the last, my goodness me.
Yeah, if you ever wanted an example of why we're not going to win, that was it. That's probably one of the worst efforts for a kick I've seen at AFL level.
Yeah, 100%. And it's so one-sided, you know, and he just couldn't get it on his right side, and he tried to manufacture a left foot kick, and it was all he had to do was put it over Rankin's head. And let him run onto it. That's all he had to do, and couldn't believe it. And I mean, that was it. That was done. And look, to be honest with you, Mac, I mean, Ben Keys, we've said for ages that he's a trier and he works hard and all the rest of it. He cannot be a linchpin in our side. He needs to be, a role player. He's a role player. He's a hard-working role player. He's not much better than Ned McHenry in terms of that.
Well, when he was just playing as a forward to compete in the forward line, he was going very well.
Very true.
And that role suited him very well.
Very true.
Every time he goes on the midfield, well, he does get a reasonable amount of the ball, but his usage of it is horrible.
Yeah. Well, I think Andaluz asked, does he deserve to be in our best 22? I think he does, in the right role. And I would say that the obvious move with the right pre-season is a swap between Keys and Pedlar next year. And for Keys to play that half-forward role, that defensive half-forward role, and for Pedlar to have Keys' midfield minutes. And, you know, that's all on Luke to continue to work on his fitness and build an engine. But I think Keys has some value, but you know, you can tell the players don't trust him. I mean, I know Tex likes a goal, but he didn't mind kicking a left foot snap instead of giving it off to Keys in the goal square, did he?
He does like his left foot snaps, and generally very good with them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was a good one in the end, but it made me laugh. All right, Nick Murray, I thought was probably in our top three. Continues to have an excellent season. Hogan got a couple of touches, but I thought Murray was pretty good overall. What do you think?
Outstanding, absolutely outstanding. And they were talking about it on the radio. He was taken, I think it's as the last player in a pre-season draft. I think that's correct.
Yeah, he was the last player on our list a few years ago.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what. He's very high up in terms of being amongst the best in our list. I mean, I thought he's excellent today, and I don't think there's any week that he might have a day one now and then when he might make an error or two, but I thought he was outstanding today. He didn't make too many errors today. He was terrific.
Very
I
good.
thought.
Very good. And again, it makes you wonder whether sometimes we need to just flick a switch and stick him up forward for 5 minutes, Mac, and let him just bust a pack open.
We have done that a couple of times in the past, and he's looked likely. So
not often enough, I don't think.
I'll be going back at least last year. I think we might have tried it once or twice, and not starting there, but just going there for a quarter or so.
Yeah, but, just swap it out.
Yeah, it'd be interesting.
Worrell looks like he's been in the side for 150 games. He's done so well, in my opinion, and I'm so happy for the lad because he worked bloody hard. We had to wait a long time to get his chance. 15 disposals off half-back and a couple of intercept marks, and generally played pretty well. Unlike Max, who I think is tiring, and as you say, Macca got set up to fail playing on green. Bloody hell. I mean, that was just why would you do that?
That would be after the solid drinking session if you're going to make that selection, and then seal it seriously. I mean, it gets back on Worrell. Yeah, Worrell's been fantastic. I mean, the guy, from the very first game he's played this year, he just looked like he should have been there all the time, and he played very, very well. And Look at that. Michael Annie is feeling the pinch just a little bit, but to put him on a green, they must have
Well,
been
he's
having
been
a
set up
real-
2 weeks in a row, hasn't he? I mean, last week we played one short in defence and Max had to play tall and got found out. This week he's playing on probably top 5 in the comp and just a hard unit. And, Max is like blow over in a strong gale.
Yeah. No, not his fault.
Yeah. No, true. I don't think Max is a midfielder, no. O'Brien we've spoken about. The Lucky Shoal. I mean, poor old Harry. How does Lucky Shoal get a run and give us 11 disposals off the wing? That's the outside run that I'm talking about, Macca, that we lack.
Well, that's his role, but he was very marshmallowy today. I didn't think he made too much effort today.
No, a lot of people were critical of his effort in the last quarter, where he sort of ended up getting caught. In his defence, and again, my spot where I was sitting allowed me to see it. He had absolutely no one to kick it to. You wouldn't have seen it on the screen. In fact, you didn't see it on the telly. But he had no one to kick. He had no one to kick it to. The ball had been switched, and no one came across. So he had to hold the ball up. The problem was that there was an easy chip kick going back the other way, and he second guessed himself. But when he looked up the first time and there was no one there offering a lead. It would have come straight back over his head.
Look, I'm sure we've got someone in the twos, like even an Ann Curvis or somebody like that who should be given a go. Cole's not going to be the long-term answer thing.
No, I agree. Jed makes the perfect point. Scholl can't break lines. That's what you want your wingman to be able to do. Remember when Rory Sloane used to play wing and do those gut runs on the fat side of the ground and just bust a line and kick it in from 50? That's the sort of play you want on the wing. We don't have any pace on our wings. We don't have any line breakers on our wings. Scholl is just your perennial short passer. He works hard and all the rest of it, but he's not a playmaker. And I mean, we've said it for a few weeks now. He's not the answer.
Yeah, no argument there.
Yeah. Geordie Butts, just a game from Geordie. I didn't think he was terribly bad or terribly good.
I thought he was pretty insipid, actually. I think he was saved by the other backman quite a bit.
Yeah, I think you're right. Muzz was certainly more proactive. Fogarty had a shocker, in my opinion, particularly after quarter time. Just could not hang on to the ball, could not take the ball. Not only, aerially, but on the deck, he was fucking hopeless. It was like a cake of soap for him.
Yeah, as I said, I think he had 6 touches in the first quarter. He had 8 for the game. So, I mean, that 3 quarters of a game to have 2 touches.
Yeah, it wasn't a good game from Darcy. He's starting to look heavy again. I don't know. Like, we all know that he's worked bloody hard in the pre-season, and I just wonder whether he's just running out of puff.
Well,
I don't know.
Yeah, look, the guy. I don't know whether was Taylor standing him, because I think Taylor was.
No, Taylor. I think Taylor was on Tex.
He may have been on Tech. Taylor is probably the best fullback in the comp at the moment. He is an outstanding player.
Yeah. Well, Taylor was on Tex, I'm pretty sure, so that wasn't the reason. Look, he made position a few times, but he couldn't take the ball. Rankin, our pick 5, 10 disposals, 9 kicks and 1 handball.
4 returns.
Well, as we've spoken about already, we needed to break that up. Rochelle, our number 6 draft pick in his second season, 9 disposals, 6 kicks, 3 handballs, and 2 weeks suspension. Tex was great up until about halfway through the second quarter, then left the building and only ended up with 8 touches for the game. 2 goals, 2 from 5 kicks.
No touches in the second half.
No, Phil thought the same. In fact, our whole forward line, I know the delivery wasn't great, but our whole forward line couldn't get their hands on the agate. Thilthorpe 8 touches, McAdam 7 touches and subbed. I mean, our whole forward line was pretty rank.
Well, it was absolutely ranked.
And like I said, the delivery in wasn't great, but I saw plenty of opportunities that went begging because of, poor ball handling or just not taking chances or trying to do too much in Rochelle's case. So I mean, that's really all we need to talk about with regards to the individuals. And really, we've gone from heroes the week after the bye in the old honourable loss to Collingwood, and looking very much like it. That was about our last shot.
Unfortunately, we probably have. Look, they will still try and make the 8 because I mean the coach he's probably thinking to himself, I've got to make the 8 or to get an extension on my contract.
Well, the club have got to come out and say to him, Macca, that finals isn't the benchmark, and surely to God, the club is saying that. If the club's not telling Matthew Nicks that finals isn't the benchmark, if the club is putting pressure on Nicks for revenue reasons, to get crowds back up and get membership up and all the rest of it, if they are saying we need to get into the finals, then we are a joke of a club, and we may as well just shut this podcast down because we're not following a footy club.
Well, the only thing is, though, Fiend, is that every club wants to play finals, and at this stage, I reckon they'll certainly pick their sides trying to win it and get into the finals, at least for the next couple of games. It might well be after the next couple of games that Blind Freddie can see it's good, good night Irene and all over, and then they should immediately start picking their sides accordingly. But I still go back to the Sloane issue. I don't want to see Sloane in the middle.
Well, I mean, you just contradicted yourself because you said they're going to pick to play finals. That's what they've been doing for the last month, and that includes playing Sloane in the middle.
Well, no, I'm not contradicting myself because I said I wouldn't have him in the middle at all. So I would think that they'll pick their best team, but if they're going to put Sloane in, they put him on the wing. That's what I think.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is if you think that they're going to continue to pick a side to make finals, then there's nothing to suggest that they're going to change things up because they've been doing that for the last month.
Look, I know what you're saying is technically correct and likely what will happen. That's not what I believe should happen, though.
No, I agree with you, 100%. But what you're suggesting should have been the theme for the season, Macca. Because exactly. Like we said at the beginning of the podcast, it was the kids that actually got us into the position of being a chance at finals in the first place.
Exactly. That's really where it all started to go wrong.
Yep. So that's when and that's where it comes back to trust. And I think that's the biggest issue. It's a lack of trust by the coaching panel on the kids that want to take this club forward.
Yeah, well, ironically, if they reinstate the young lads, then they probably might give themselves the best chance of making the 8.
Yeah, well, it doesn't matter. It
doesn't matter. No, I 100% agree with that. 100%. I don't give a stuff whether we make the finals or not. All I want is that I would like to see that we do get players from other clubs that and preferably a midfielder of high quality. Yeah, I'm certainly on the same page on that. And also try and work out a game plan that we can practice at this stage that's different to what we're doing at the moment, because the one we've got at the moment's got a few holes in it.
Yeah. So we're going to have Rochelle out next week and for the next couple.
Yeah.
We're going to, we need to, well, in my opinion, we need to think about what we're going to do with Chase Jones. I think he needs to go into the midfield. So I would suggest that if Nankervis at the very least isn't in the 22 next week, and if Harry Schoenberg isn't in the 22 next week, then we're not serious.
Did you say Nankervis first?
Yep.
Well, tell me about it, please, because I'm not up to what the Twos have been doing. So, how's he been playing?
He's been playing very well off halfback. He's tall. He runs. He's got a good kick. He's athletic. And he's been playing like that for a month. And he's one of the reasons why I'm lukewarm on getting Redmond, because I think we've got that type of player sitting under our nose with a bit of development. So 2 years a year and a half on the list. He's been very, very good and deserves an opportunity.
Yep, fair enough.
And I think if we're going to get more out of Jones, we can get him off a halfback flank and put Nankervis on a halfback flank, move Jones up to the wing, get rid of Lockie Scholl. There's one piece of the puzzle gone. I think you could probably piss Rory Sloane to a half-forward flank in place of Rochelle for a couple of weeks. Piss Keys off to a forward pocket or whatever and start using Luke Pedler a little bit more. Schoenberg's got to come back in. I would have said the same about Berry, but if he's got COVID, that's a couple of weeks. Dowling, people in the chat are saying Dowling's had a very good month, but I don't know, he's a bit light, and it's his first year on the list, so I wouldn't be disappointed if he doesn't quite get an opportunity this year, but he's certainly showing good signs. But
Dowling is a guy of good talent, but I think you're right about his lightness. I think that he builds up over the summer, and he could be a good candidate for next year.
Yeah. So that's what I think. Will it happen? Someone in the chat said, what will happen is that they'll give Ned a run for Rochelle and Shuey bin sub, and that'll be it.
That'd be very disappointing if that happened.
Yeah. So, look, it's a bit deflating. You wonder whether we all as supporters got a bit caught up in the excitement. But I think we've consistently said that success this year shouldn't have overridden development, and I think we've been pretty consistent in banging on about that, Macca, haven't we, all season, that this year really is about taking the next step developmentally. I agree with I think it was Tomo that said that I'm very sceptical about Van Berlo as a midfield coach. I don't feel like we're progressing at all in the midfield space, either selection, setups, whatever, ball movement, connectivity between defence and forwards. I don't feel like we've made any strides at all. It did seem like we had for a while when we were playing the younger lads through there, but now we're back to the old stodgy shit again.
Ironically, that's 100% correct, because we did look like we really had it down pat, and it was really, and all the scribes were saying
breathtaking at times.
Yeah, the scribes were saying how good we are and how the movement to attack, and there was something they were saying that's got the best attack in the competition, all that sort of stuff. But yep, as usual, we shit our pants and no good.
Our ball movement was breathtaking when we were willing to run the lines, willing to work the angles, hit up the short passes, drop our eyes going into forward 50, all those things, Macca. If you go back and have a look at round 5, 6, 7, and look at some of the stuff we were doing, and compare it to what we offered up against Essendon last week and GWS this week, you'd think you were watching a different team.
Yeah, you would. Yeah, there's no comparison.
So, people asking who would I get as a midfield coach? I don't bloody know. Someone else. I don't know. I'd love to get Josh Carr on the crew. But and that's the same with who would I replace Matthew Nicks with? Obviously Hardwick, but he's not on the market. I don't know. But someone what do you think about Nathan Buckley, Mac? Just to round out the conversation.
Well, I never really rated Nathan as a coach, so probably I'm not the right person to ask. Look, it seemed to me like when McRae took over from Buckley, it was that Buckley expected to play the players to play for him, whereas McRae, they want to play for McRae, which is there is a difference in it. One is demanding it, another one is getting it because they want to. And really, McRae looks like he's built a team of players that want to play as a team. But Buckley didn't seem to be able to do that. So I'm not sold on Buckley.
Yeah, to be fair on Nathan, McRae's been kissed on the dick when it comes to a couple of guns that Buckley didn't have.
Well, that is true. Yeah, I mean, the Dacos situation, yeah. No doubt about
Darcy
that.
Moore.
Yep. Well, Darcy Moore was there then.
Yeah, but he was only a kid. I really like the way Nathan Buckley speaks on commentary. I think he's extremely knowledgeable and insightful. But you know that he's a galvanising type and that he will demand a lot out of players. So I think it would depend on whether he has learnt a bit from his experience at Collingwood and whether he'd be able to be more constructive in his approach. But remember I said earlier that we needed a hard-ass coach to take us to the next level. Well, in many respects, a guy like Nathan Buckley is exactly that.
Yeah, I don't know about the hard-ass coach, but I mean, they've got to they do have to have a hard edge to them. There's no doubt about that. But they also have
ruthless on selection, ruthless in decision-making. That's what I mean by hard-ass, not a yeller.
Yeah, okay, that's fair enough. Yep. But
so, he'd be that type, wouldn't he?
Well, his ability, I think, is to work relationships with players as well for the coach. I mean, the better the relationship you've got with the player, the more he's going to want to play for you. So, yeah, there's got to be a hard edge on top of it when it's not happening. But I can see that some of the successful clubs, you can see that the players are playing for the coach.
Well, you look at Port, they're definitely playing for Hinkley, and yet Hinkley's not the one, by all reports, that's making all the tactical moves. So, I mean, at the end of the day, what's the most important remit for the main coach, and has the landscape changed where the main coach is more of a relationship manager, and it's your assistant coaches that you need to invest more in? I'm not quite sure, to be honest.
Yeah, well, it's interesting, but I think what will happen is Nick will be the coach next year. I think that will just continue, and I think that it'd be very unlikely he'll be the coach the year after unless we do something special next year.
Yeah. What do you think about Beveridge?
Well, I see where PJ Razor was just about to reply to him saying, I hate Beveridge. I don't think he's a good coach. I mean, seriously, that sounds ridiculous when you won a premiership, but the midfield that he's got... And
I think he was kissed on a dick too.
Yeah, I just can't believe that they lose games with the midfield they've got. And also, I don't think he often doesn't have the players in the right position as well, and in the forward lines and the back line. So, no, I don't rate him. Well, I don't rate him. That's unfair because the guy's won a flag. But he's not the guy I'd want anyhow.
Yeah, I think Beveridge was a big beneficiary of a couple of really good drafts and
Yeah.
I mean, you have to be able to coach to win a flag, but I think he got them up. But he hasn't done a lot with that list since, and they've had some bloody good talent through there. Not a lot's changed on that list, has it?
No, I mean, they've got an outstanding ruckman, they've got outstanding mids, and they've got a couple of good forwards. They probably suffer a little bit down back, but they should be doing better than they are.
Yeah. So, look, it's a conversation for the future. It's just hypothetical, but it's that you've got to be lucky, I think, to a degree. But I think you've got to also The clubs have to be pretty good these days at how they screen potential coaches, and gone are the days of just having a panel of, Lee Matthews and all those old stages, and they got their ideas. I think it's tough finding an executive job in the real world. I think it should be just as tough with the same sort of metrics for a professional senior coach as well. I don't know whether we're quite that sophisticated yet in AFL land.
Well, our history says no.
Yeah.
It's very, very hard actually to find a perfect coach. I mean, Pike was a good coach, but he lacked in relationships apparently, and but he's supposed to be strategically pretty good. But so it's rare to find one that's got both, that's really tactically very smart and got the personality to actually have the players have a buy-in with him. Obviously only one team wins the flag each year, which proves the point.
Yeah, and look, I think it's important for players to have buy-in, and you can't argue that the players have bought in. Nix has done a very, very good job of getting buy-in from the players. But as I said, I think that can turn really quick if he continues to show a lack of trust in the juniors. Then that will erode the buy-in very quickly, and I reckon he's right at that point at the moment, Macca, where we interviewed the kids. Over the last couple of years, we've interviewed the kids, and they're all champing at the bit to take the club to the next step and all the rest of it. Then they don't get the opportunity to do that. And I think for a while they can kind of cop the fact that, we're still developing and whatnot. But when they see blokes like Sloan and that keep turning in those efforts, and they're stuck on a half-forward flank, you can't blame them for starting to lose that buy-in. And I think it's a balancing act that Nix is going to have to successfully work through to have any chance of getting another contract with this group.
Yeah, well, I think he has got to buy in from the players. What he really needs is to continue to have a relationship with the player, but he needs a Josh Carter as the type person, as an assistant who's really smart, that can pull all the right moves. I mean, there's no doubt Hickley's not coaching Port Adelaide. He's down there patting everybody and going yahoo when they win and all the rest of it. But there's no doubt Josh Carr he's pulling all the moves upstairs.
So that was supposedly a combination of Nathan Van Berlo and Scott Burns. So you're saying maybe we need to have a look at a couple of our assistants?
Exactly what I'm saying. Yeah, they're not good enough. No, they aren't good enough. We don't make the right moves at the right time. We're too late with the move. We don't make it at all. I think Van Berlo should definitely go. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
And look, because I think Nix has got. I think he's done well with his buy-in with the players. There's no doubt about that. But I don't think he's ultra smart as a coach. So that means he's got to have good assistant coaches, and I don't think ours are smart enough.
Yeah. Look, it's a very interesting talking point, Mac, whether the role of the senior coach has changed a little bit. I mean, whenever Port are having a good, successful year, it's usually because Hinkley is backed by a very good assistant. He's had Richardson and Walsh, and now he's got Carr. He's always benefited from a really good assistant. It's hard to know what other clubs are like, but it does beg the question, when you do have a coach, and there's no doubt that Nix has done very well to have those relationships with the players, is that his biggest strength, and do we need to underpin it with a strategic thinker? My worry is that there's a propensity under the current coaching regime to not trust the juniors, and if that continues, it doesn't matter what they do, they'll lose those kids.
Well, if you have the right people doing the strategy, they'll take that into account.
Those assistant coaches aren't on selection committee.
They are?
No.
Well, I would say they'd have some influence, though. I mean, Port Adelaide have had no hesitation in trying juniors and putting him in there.
Agreed.
So, and you're quite right about with Kenny. Is if you look at Kenny's coaching career and look who his assistant coaches are, the rise and fall of Kenny over those 10, 11 years or whatever it is. There are years where he's got really good and he's had top assistant coaches. They leave, and the next year they're not so good, and he goes down, and he gets another good assistant coach in, and up he goes again. And that's if you did a graph of Kenny's results and matched it up with who his assistant coaches were, you'd see quite clearly that he is the front man who the players love, and there's other people who are doing all the tactics and game plan behind it all. So
yeah,
and like that, that's where I think we're weak.
Yeah. Well, I think the club's in a very interesting position. It's been a while, and certainly the first time under Nick's tenure that we have gone from being acceptable to be at the bottom half of the ladder to now blowing ostensibly blowing a finals opportunity. So there's 4 or 5 games left. It will be a very interesting little case study to see how the club and the coaching panel and selection handle the next 4 or 5 weeks in terms of selection, in terms of who they play, and how they play, whether they just release the shackles and let them run. And I think it'll say a lot about what next year looks like, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think you're right there, Payne.
Yeah. All right, well, look, let's leave it there because we've gone over 2 hours, mate. It's been a bit of an epic one. Thanks to Tomo and Arab, and sorry to Tom in terms of coming on, but thanks for the input of everyone live. Thanks also to everyone who's chatted both on YouTube and on Discord. It's just fantastic. Just fantastic, the support that we get on a Sunday night Macca, and it really makes this cast move. So thanks to everyone for your ongoing support. We will be back again, obviously, next Sunday night at 8:30. But until then, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Macca. Take care.
Yep, I do.
And we'll see you all next week. Good night, everyone.
Yeah, good night all. See ya.